Thursday, October 31st. The city streets are crowded for the holiday. Even with the rain, hidden in the chaos is the element.
There is an old story we often tell ourselves about violence. That violence is something primal in us, a leftover from an older version of our species, and that civilization has spent its history trying to hold it down. A thing inherent to each of us, binding its time,
waiting to strike like snakes.
Waiting for the moment when all other paths are spent.
But I'm there too.
It is a story that makes a certain kind of sense, explaining the perpetual cycle of attacks and retaliations. Each act building on the last, each blow justified by the one before it, suggesting that the only thing separating good from evil is the ethical mask we use to hide our own violence behind.
The hell are you supposed to be?
This mask has many names: justice, war, order. Or in its rawest form,
I'm vengeance.
The 2022 depiction of Batman is a figure who has accepted this story almost literally. A man who has organized his entire existence around the assumption that violence, applied with sufficient method and seriousness, is the only answer to the violence of others. He basically operates inside two frameworks. The first is that where lawful authority has collapsed, as it has in Gotham, human beings revert to something closer to a state of war. A war of all against all. Violence is what rushes in to fill the vacuum when the institutions meant to hold it back can no longer do the work. The second is that violence is not in itself good or evil. It is simply a means, like any other, capable of being directed toward varied ends. In Batman's case, toward the eventual cleansing of his city, by any means necessary.
Fear is a tool.
Together, these two propositions form a closed loop. The world is violent where the law is absent, violence is a neutral instrument, therefore the answer to the violence of the wicked is violence wielded by those who are not wicked. And while these propositions can and often do provide some valid insights into the origins of human violence, I find their conclusions incomplete. Partly because of my own ambivalence toward the claim that violence is somehow woven into our very nature, and partly because when applied, they don't seem to resolve anything.
I wish I could say I'm making a difference, but I don't know. Murder, robberies, assault. 2 years later, they're all up.
What I see in this particular depiction of Batman is an eventual departure from both of these stories, followed by a recognition that violence may not be something fundamental in us, not only a natural response, nor only a buried instinct waiting to be released, but something that can, through great peril and effort, be understood for what it truly is. In my search for the philosophy of violence, I stumbled across a French thinker named René Girard, who spent most of his life on this exact question. He's been called a literary critic, a theologian, a philosopher of culture. I think of him primarily as an anthropologist. His work is enormous, touching on mythology, the sacred, and the role of sacrifice in human societies. I won't pretend I can compress it all into a video essay about Batman. But what I want to take from him is one thread: his account on violence. Because unlike the two stories we've just walked through, Girard doesn't believe violence is only something we inherit from inside ourselves, a residue of nature waiting to be released. He believes it is also something that arises in the relationship between us and in the structural setting in which we often find ourselves. But Girard doesn't start with violence. He believes that at the core of most of our behaviors is something far more universal. desire.
Because desire is not natural. Desire is not animal.
Desire, according to Girard, is not something we choose for ourselves. He says that we don't see an object and decide spontaneously that this is what we want. Instead, he suggests that we mimic the desires of others. We want a specific thing, whether physical or not, because other people either have it or are striving for it.
I think desire usually is born out of the contemplation of someone else who is desiring.
And this is what he calls triangular mimetic desire. There is a subject, us, an object, the thing desired, an apple, a car, a house, or a social standing, and a model, the person who either possesses the object or is actively reaching for it. To give a specific example, in my childhood I had a specific goal in mind, one that stretched across years of my adolescence: collect as many Lego figures as humanly possible, especially the Star Wars ones. And there was a time that I had them all: Darth Vader, Luke, Princess Leia, both of the droids, Han Solo, you name it, I had it. And I was, for a time, content with them. But then my cousin got a Lego set that contained the figure of Chewbacca. Until that point, I hadn't considered that I needed the figure of Chewbacca. There was nothing more special about him than my other figures. He didn't even have that hat with two faces. But as soon as I saw what my cousin had and I didn't, the figure became my object of desire, and my cousin became the model. And this alone is harmless. We, to a significant degree, learn what to want by watching others. Our parents, friends, the people we admire. Most of the time, the dynamic is benign. But when the model is close enough to become a rival, when the one who taught us to want the object is also the one standing between us and having it, the person who teaches us what to want is also, the moment we reach for it, the one standing in our way. And so admiration curdles into rivalry. And once that rivalry takes hold, the original object starts to fade. The fight stops being about the thing and starts being about the other person. We no longer want the object so much as we want to be where the model is, to take his place. And from rivalry, eventually, we arrive at violence. Or in Girard's terms, mimetic violence. In this mimetic violence, the rivals are unknowingly participating in a cycle where each one is convinced of his own justification for further escalations. Each wears a different ethical mask, believing his aggression is only a response to the aggression inflicted on him first. But to anyone outside the cycle, the rivals are almost impossible to tell apart.
Please don't hurt me. Who are you?
Me. I'm nobody. I'm just an instrument, here to unmask the truth about this cesspool we call a city.
In Violence and the Sacred, Girard describes what happens when mimetic rivalry reaches its highest intensity. As the two rivals imitate each other's desire and with it their aggression and obsession, the similarity between the combatants grow ever greater, each turns himself into an imitative double of the other. Girard's name for this figure is the Monstrous Double.
You're part of this too.
How am I part of this?
You'll see.
The moment we step into the mimetic cycle, whether of desire or of rivalry, we ourselves become models for others, who in turn can and eventually will mimic us.
I know now what I must become.
And Batman has become such a model. But because his mode of operation, by this point anyway, is mainly vengeance, he became a model for those whose object of desire is the very same, vengeance. The only difference is the moral framing Batman uses to justify his. But fundamentally, the result is a double. A figure who appears distorted, threatening, monstrous. Anything but identical to oneself. When in reality, the double becomes a mirror for everything we do and cannot admit.
Why did you write me all those cards?
I told you. We've been doing this together. You're part of this.
We didn't do anything together.
We did. What did we just do? I asked you to bring him in the light, and you did.
Bring him into the light,
We're such a good team.
and you'll find where I'm at.
According to Girard, the mimetic cycle of violence is a cycle precisely because its structural nature doesn't allow us to recognize it as imitation. We tend to justify our actions as fundamentally opposed to the actions of our rivals. And so, for Batman to see the Riddler as an extension of himself would collapse the moral framework that, in his eyes, is the most important aspect separating him from those he fights.
You showed me what was possible.
You showed me all it takes is fear and a little focused violence. You inspired me.
You're out of your goddamn mind.
And so, as Batman, we too often insist on the difference. But the more fiercely we insist, the more the face behind the glass starts resembling our own. So then, how exactly does mimetic theory help us where the previous frameworks could not? If the cycle persists on our blindness to it, is there any hope of unveiling the structure and seeing, on an individual level, the currents of our desires, the mechanism of our rivalry, the vortex of violence, and our vengeful need to resolve it? After all, we cannot stand outside the cycle and observe it. We are always inside it. But perhaps we can begin to see it, and once we see it, we can choose in our own person not to submit to it fully. For Girard, this unveiling comes in a form of the apocalypse.
What have you done?
The word apocalypse is not used here in the sense of cosmic destruction, but in the original Greek meaning, uncovering. A form of recognition that the desire, the rivalry, the violence we believed we were directing has taken on a life of its own. That what we set out to do is no longer what we are doing. That the form has detached from the original intention, however noble it may have been, and now stripped of our original meaning, perpetuates itself. For Girard, the apocalypse is a collective unveiling. A community seeing through the violence it directed outward and is ultimately resolved by a collective scapegoat. But in the case of Batman, I think the mechanism works differently, and perhaps for us, more practically. A gradual uncovering, when the violence we directed returns to us in a form we no longer recognize as our own.
Who the hell are you?
When what we set out to oppose is revealed to be the very thing we have become.
I'm vengeance.
We perhaps cannot, by the logic of the mimetic theory, escape being a model. Everyone, by its definition, is always modeling something for someone. But maybe we can recognize that we, with our actions, offer an imitation, and choose what we are offering. And so, where Batman once stood as a vengeful judge, convinced of one's own brutality as a necessary evil for a greater good, inspiring more brutality in service of seemingly the same ultimate goal, we too, like Batman, can take a literal leap of faith. And and shine the light on the only person responsible for our own violence, ourselves. And by doing so, redefining ourselves into a form that provides something else, something that is responsible for what it offers for imitation.
I'm starting to see now. I have had an effect here, but not the one I intended. Vengeance won't change the past, mine or anyone else's. I have to become more. People need hope.
There is probably no theory that can fully explain the tangle of relationships and conflicts that arise between human beings living in societies, mimetic theory included. It is perhaps impossible to try to compress something as complicated as human violence into a single doctrine, or a single video essay about Batman. Even if we would accept the mimetic framework as a fundamental truth, human beings would probably still find ways to commit violence outside of it.
You know this place is never gonna change. It's gonna be a power grab. It'll be bloody.
After all is said and done, Batman will still be a force of strength, capable of and willing to use violence. But there are some undeniable truths we can take both from René Girard and from Batman himself. A way of seeing human behavior not as something inseparable from human nature, but as something that can be understood and in our own person, perhaps mitigated. Because as it is with most complicated answers, the best place to start asking the questions is within ourselves.